Welcome to Leadership Roundtable. I'm here today with a guest who I met through a veterans mentoring organization, Steve Pinheiro. Um, we actually came in contact because as you'll know by the end of this call, Steve is a super aggressive leader who believes in going out and getting and earning his own way. And so when Steve joined a veteran mentoring group called American Corporate Partners, or ACP, he found me listed, reached out. We did not hook up through that organization. They matched us both up with different people, but Steve and I have become friends since then. And we've found that we have a lot of very similar leadership qualities. Steve, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. And again, John, I can't thank you enough for, again, believing in the value that I may be able to add to your project here. And again, I'm always super, super happy and enthusiastic about sharing stuff about me and diving into this leadership topic, because I think, quite honestly, it is a super, super important thing that is going on in the world right now. That it's a passion of mine. I mean, I study it when I'm just sitting around at the house. I mean, I'm retired and I still study leadership. So again, I can't thank you enough for having me on and allowing me to share some of my views and my perspectives on these things.
Yeah, well, the honor is truly mine, Steve, because I think that you're an outstanding role model for other veterans who are walking the path that you're walking, as whether they're retiring from the military or they are getting ready to leave, or they have just served their contract and they're getting out. So I think that your story has a lot of value. I know I've told you that before, and I hope that by the end of this call, I hope that others see what I'm talking about when I say what you've experienced is going to add a lot of value to folks getting out. So, Steve, real quickly, I don't want to brush over your military service. So, if you wouldn't mind, could you uh, tell us kind of what you did, how long you did it for, and some of the highlights?
So I'm a logistician by MOS. I'm a 92 Fox, which is a petroleum operations specialist. That primarily I dealt with not only fuel distribution to ground forces, but also aviation and multinational forces based on where I was deployed. Um, that led me, I did that for all 22 years, but ultimately my heart pulled me to now Fort Liberty. And I spent over half of my career there in the airborne community, serving Special Operations Command and the entities that fall under that. I was fortunate enough to be in Afghanistan 7 times with some really super incredible human beings that I will never forget them. And I wish I could talk to them more. It's just, that's my own fault because I don't, I haven't mastered that networking piece to perfection. I did serve 2 tours overseas, both times in Germany. One of the most exciting times I had over there was I got to be an observer controller trainer at a joint multinational readiness base in Hohenfels, Germany, which was super awesome. I mean, it was long hours. It was nonstop. I mean, we were getting after it 10, 11 months out of 12. Um, but the exposure that I had to so many other things over there going on in the global military and the NATO forces was just super incredible and highly valuable to kind of some of the things I implement today, even in my own life, or what I was hoping to do when I retired. Um, but yeah, I've also been went to the Balkans once, to Kosovo, and did that thing, and my first tour in Germany. So I retired in March of 2017. I went to the Citadel to finish my degree in exercise science. So, which is kind of funny because you'll hear me refer to that a lot, that big gap. Did logistics for 22 years, but I have an exercise science degree. Those really don't go together. I'm not out there, teaching anybody how to, use a fuel system as an exercise implement, but I maybe at some point I'll find the mesh, and who knows, there's maybe some groundbreaking stuff one day. I don't know. But then COVID hit, So I graduated online. Then we had also built a house. So my wife Natasha and I have kind of been on this little adventure since I retired, and we really want to stop and like stabilize and like just and now we have a grandson. So it's like, okay, we love our adventurous travel and things, but that pulled us to North Carolina from South Carolina because my grandson now lives 15 minutes down the road from me. So I get to see Cooper all the time as much as I want. Um, and it's just really nice having, the all the kids under my feet again, because my other children, they also are here in the Cumberland County, Polk County area. Um, so that's kind of like the little bit about me, kind of where I am right now.
So you said so much there that just has me popping questions into my brain. So uh, how close to Virginia do you live?
So from Virginia, I'm probably, I'd say probably 2.5 hours from the border,
Okay,
you
all right.
know. Um,
The so you're this is cool to me. So you've been able to relocate, build a new house, be closer to your family. That's awesome. You've mentioned your son a few times and potentially, going into business with your son. Um, just out of curiosity, did your son serve as well?
he is currently serving. He is a young whippersnapper E5 infantryman in 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 2nd Battalion, 82nd Airborne Division, which he's in the second of the 505th, which we know the anniversary of D-Day. I tried to explain to him, I'm like, son, you really need to understand what unit you're actually in when you go to work every day, the history. And it's funny thing would have it. So, Clay, when we were in Germany on our second tour, we went to Normandy, St. Mir. We actually stayed in it. My wife is like an Airbnb guru when we were going around Europe. And so she found an Airbnb literally that was the farm of the St. Mary Glees drop zone. And the Lafayette Bridge was at the end of that driveway. And my kids as teenagers just walked all around it. And I was telling the stories and all the history. And like, oh, yeah, cool, dad. Oh, look at this plant over here. And like, when are we going to go eat? Like, I want some pizza. And it's like, they were teenagers. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. But now I'm like, son, do you understand? Like, you saw the original Iron Mike statue face to face in France. And there's one on Fort Liberty as well that you can go drive by on an everyday basis. I'm like, wrap your head around that, how life comes full circle. Um, so he is currently serving. He's airborne. He's also a sniper team leader in a reconnaissance platoon for 2nd Battalion's headquarters company. So he's getting after it, and I'm very proud of him. But I get to kind of speak into his life as, from a senior NCO's perspective. Although I was never an infantryman, I did a lot of infantry stuff because I was asked to do that, just to survive. But he and I can have some of those conversations, and and again, like I say, that young whippersnapper E5, he knows everything, barrel chested freedom fighter, and he's got it all figured out. I'm like, son, I'm just here to tell you, you need to listen to dad on this one. The old lion's still around for a reason, and you need to pay attention to what I'm telling you here. So it's a good time. It's a good dynamic when we talk about, the military. So
Yeah, that's really awesome. And there's and I want to be very specific about what's awesome about that is the the joy that comes over your face when you talk about your son and his experiences and what he's doing. Um, it's really cool. I posted the other day about the First Infantry Division and the fact that I was able to be multi-generational in serving with them, and I can just see the joy on your face, and I totally get it. As two logistics guys who got stuck with an infantry uh, unit. I did a lot of infantry and engineer stuff, And I always like to just leave it at engineer because then people think I'm smart. I don't tell them that they're combat engineers and that,
I know what you did.
yeah. But then I eventually tell people, I'm like, yeah, we blew things up a lot. It
Oh
was,
yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, a lot of explosives. So, anyway, so thank you for that. I appreciate that, background, because I think that it adds just a lot more credibility to why I believe your leadership story makes a difference and you're going to help people, just by telling that story. So, you've gone through a lot of, personal trials of the building of the house, moving around, kind of, narrowing your focus a little bit, and we'll dig into what is that next chapter for you. I want to talk a little bit real quick about, the veteran challenge of lining up with the right mentor to help, um, really. And I use the word mentor in what I believe to be its true form is, um, as a mentor, it's our job to offer advice and guidance because we've walked the path, we know the journey, and I think you have a unique experience because of your journey to find a mentor. So I wanted to just, have you talk through what that looked like for you, some of the frustrations that you dealt with, because I think there's other folks who are going to have some of the same frustrations. And then I think we do need to talk a little bit about how you just got aggressive in your own search and you started reaching out to people saying, hey, I think you have something of value that I could grow from. And obviously, I experienced that phone call myself, so I know how powerful that is. So, why don't you, talk us through that journey? When did you first learn about the different organizations out there, and how did you make your decision?
So, um, my wife and I actually we had to have some pretty vulnerable, onion peeling back conversations about Steve Pinheiro on the back patio. And a quick, side note to that, my spouse plays into this story. Just know she is in the background of all of these stories because we that's what we do. We sit out on the back patio every single night. Yes, I may be smoking a cigar. Yes, I may be drinking a bourbon. Maybe I'm not. Maybe we're just playing with the dogs. Um, but that's what we talk about at some point in the day. We really are trying to force the issue of talking about us. Where are we going? And how are we setting the example for our family and these adult children we have now that are making way bigger decisions than they did when they were teenagers? Um, so that's always going to be playing in the background. So let's just be sure that, I want to be
Mhm.
sure everybody understands that.
That's
Having
fair.
having said that, like I said, I've been retired since um, really 1 April 2017 and went to the Citadel, stayed busy. I was working 50, 60 hours while I was still taking a week, while I was still taking 15 credit hours a semester full time, walking the sidewalks of that university along with the cadets. Um, I come to find out that the library was one of my favorite places. Didn't know that when I was a teenager and going to college back when I was, 19, 20, 21. But I love the library. It was a very quiet place. I could gather my thoughts and ground myself. So I say all that to say I was still busy, but I didn't have a job. I was working for free at the Citadel for 3 years because I was working on a certification. And so basically, I was what they called a professional intern. So for 3 years straight, I worked for free, traveled, getting, coming in 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning with the sports team, getting right back up the next day at 3:45 in the morning. I got workouts before I ever go to class at 8 o'clock. So I did that for 3 years. So I was busy. Retirement really didn't start sinking in. Then when we moved to the upstate of Greenville, South Carolina, that's when retirement started really actually getting really heavy. And so I'm trying to get out and play some golf. I'm trying to stay active. I had a group of men I smoked cigars with on every Saturday. They were all very highly educated, super wealthy guys. And this we talked about money, we talked about education, we talked about politics, obviously, religion, take your pick. It was that kind of like that. We were trying to like develop that fidelity that group of men there. But I wasn't, I have my retirement check coming in, and my wife's a chiropractor and a real estate agent. So, her side hustle is real estate, but she does chiropractic. So she's going to her clinic and whatever. So we kind of like, then the discussion got really uncomfortable about like, hey, the husband and wife are starting to have that. Well, what did you do today? And I'm like, well, I don't know if you want to go there. I'm like, that's a pretty bold statement. If it's asked of me, and then when I ask it back, it's like, well, that's a little uncomfortable for her. And I'm like, so we had to like stop right then and there, because that path was not going to go well. So I started looking for a job. And so what I did is I went back to what my transitioning out briefings and all that stuff was back in 2017. So I started rebooting all of my stuff. I started cleaning up organizing my thoughts, my paperwork, my resumes, get back on LinkedIn, start networking, start doing this thing. I was doing all the, prescribed steps. But having been disconnected and already been retired for 6 years and seeing some of the trends that were going on now and some of the information that was out there, I was going like, whoa, hang on a minute. Like I am not going to get pulled into LinkedIn and spend exorbitant amounts of time on that because LinkedIn is a tool, and that's where I had to keep it. I have this tool bag, this metaphorical tool bag. And we talked about that's the strength and conditioning all the time. All these people talk about all these certifications they have and all these wazoo workouts they can program and all this stuff's going on. But at the end of the day, it all comes to the same event. It's like, you're a carpenter. What tools are you using to build your thing? And so I had to step back even from LinkedIn and be like, okay, LinkedIn is a tool. It is not my everyday time consuming thing. Now, albeit there are some highly influential people that are preaching that if you really want to do this thing. And I don't necessarily think that's wrong. What I think is that I had to understand, again, myself, what I needed from this product that's out there. And then I would start going down the right rabbit holes that I knew were going to be beneficial to me. The other stuff was just kind of white noise, scrolled through it. If it didn't apply, I didn't need it. And so I didn't really want to get bogged down in trying to read every post of everything, of every person of all the time, which led me to ACP. It popped out of me. I'm like, hey, this sounds like something that I can sink my teeth into, start researching it, and see where this goes. So I ran into a gentleman by the name of Eric Brew, and Eric Brew and I hit it off immediately. We just vibed as men. A lot of our concepts, our mentalities, and again, we have the same understandings of the concepts. I'm a real big advocate of philosophies and beliefs are two different things. And I think people always try to put them together, and they're not, because then you start falling on swords that you shouldn't be falling on. A philosophy is highly fluid. That comes from my brain. I can move it, I can shape it, completely get rid of it, bring in a new one, however I want to do. My belief system is here in my heart. I'm going to die on that mountain. So if I'm going to get into, and Eric was the same way, and we started talking about all these things and how we did our lives. And so then I started reaching out to ACP, and I'm like, hey, I kind of want to do this thing. And we started talking, and they linked me up. All that was kind of around Christmas, Thanksgiving. So then I had to wait, and I'm still kicking the can down the road, still getting a lot of golf in, but I kind of really wasn't moving forward. So then once the new year came around, which you and I came into contact at that same time, there was seemed like a lot of stuff was out there about this imposter syndrome, and people throwing it around there, which is how you and I started talking. Because at first I'm like, you know what, this totally fits me. And I'm like, I have all these great ideas. I want to do all these things, but I'm scared to do it. What if this, what if that, what if I'm really not as good as I think I am? And we start going through all those things. Then you and I started talking. I'm like, you know what? No, that's not it at all. That's not where I'm at. I'm fully confident with the person that I am, the man that I am, what my resume says, how I tell my story. So when you and I decide, like, look, we're going to throw that out, that's not where you are, and we started talking more and more, that's when I started going back in and going like, okay, I'm going to go in now, and I'm going to start specifically targeting people using all the same methodologies about LinkedIn that is out there, and they teach you how to do it. But I'm one of my philosophies, everything is scalable. I can make it however big, or I can make it however small and narrowed and focused as I want to be. So that's what I did. And that's when I started reaching out to specific people now and having specific conversations about specific things. And all of those things become relatable topics because, again, nothing happens in a vacuum. So life experience, military experience, all of us can share those things. And ultimately, what I started becoming comfortable being uncomfortable with is that we had just talked previously for, when kind of like in our little virtual green room we were doing here. Vulnerability is key. Vulnerability is an asset to me. I have no issues telling my story. I will be as transparent as you want me to be. I will always warn you up front. There's some dark stuff in there that may make you uncomfortable. So if you ask the question, I only ask that you're prepared for the entire answer. But that is really was kind of what sort of really got the wheels turning. And now I felt like I was using the resources the way that best suited me. I had to tailor that to me instead of just taking the resource, trying to fit into it and then see what happens. Because at the end of the day, I really feel like I'm always going to be coming into contact with things that eventually they're going to burn out. It's not going to last very long because it wasn't tailored to me and I didn't tailor it
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah.
I'm working with a pre-prescribed cutter of a shape of an object, and I'm trying to mold myself in that object, which there is some validity to that. Just not all the time. That's just not my modus operandi. I have to tailor it to me. And I think that I had the tools to do that. And I just really had to become confident with that. And then boom, off I went. Now, subsequently, I'm still retired. But I also had to prioritize my efforts elsewhere. My wife and I made this massive decision to leave South Carolina, build this house on 2+ acres. There's all kinds of work involved in that. And now that I'm back around, easily accessible to my kids, not only geographically, but we have way more conversations in a day, in a week, and so that caused me again to reprioritize and be like, once I get all those things in their spots, then it's back to, okay, is there an occupation out there I would like to do? My son and I are talking about building our own business. What does that look like? That takes a ton of research. But I'm also networking on that topic. I'm out there poking around in the world, asking other really smart businessmen, how did you get started? What are some of the pitfalls? I'm really, really inadequate in this area, but I'm really super strong in this area. How do I get those things to link up and from an education standpoint? So honestly, the one staple in my day I try to do is continue to network and be in contact with people that are actually beneficial to me. And a lot of people think like, oh, well, that's really either selfish or you're paying yourself in a box. I'm like, well, I don't know if I am, because the from all the things I've learned from all the people I've spoke with, from all of my past mentors and the individuals, men and women I have in my lives that I seek this very specific, important advice from, I've come to might be a little edgy conclusion for myself. To me, opposites don't attract for a long-term effect. It's awesome in the beginning. There's a lot of
Mhm.
different things going on and there's a lot of discovery. But if we're going to go take the long walk together, especially as a mentor, which is what we're talking, we'll bleed into
Yeah.
that. The person walking beside me has got to be a lot like me,
Yep.
because in those times of adversity, somebody that is maybe, again, kind of an opposite, coming from a different direction, variety is amazing and diversity is super essential to an overall picture. But when you get into certain spots, you have to have the same people in your circle speaking the same language, from the same ideas. And again, what I think is lost is there is a super lot of diversity and a whole bunch of people that are still the same person,
Mhm.
because that's where objectivity comes from. Can we unlock our mind and open up and go to and like, hey, well, what about this? And you start talking about all these different theories. Well, that's diversity too. It's diversity in thought, but all the people around me, exactly the same. We just have the ability to go outside of our boxes and start playing around with these different ideas. So
It's interesting because you don't fit a typical mold of, the cookie cutter, you know, grizzled army sergeant retiree. um, to the story that you just told is one that adds so much value because it is diverse in thought, and you've put so much thought into it because you're right, it's easy to go out there and you can just pair up with somebody. And it was funny because we did connect. We connected over. It was a post that I had written. It was about imposter syndrome, but the interesting part about it was, my post is get past it. Get outside of your head. Stop telling yourself you're not good enough, um, because you are. Now, I agree with your theory about LinkedIn, and I've adopted. Here's where I'm at with all that. You've got all these super leaders that have a buttload of followers, and they'll tell you here's the prescription to get there. And here's the problem though, is these guys are also self-made rich. They've gone out, they've earned theirs, they've bought, built, and sold companies. And if you dig into their background, they are professional writers, and that's how they get paid. They've already gotten paid, and they're committed to LinkedIn 100%. And what some of them are doing is they're selling packages to teach you how to do it, and that's how they make their additional revenue. I don't make any money off of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my hobby, and it gets, um, depending on how you break it down, because I contribute to multiple different social media sites, but most of it's the same content. It's YouTube is the only one that is a little bit different content. Um, this video will be shared on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, but it's housed on YouTube. That's the platform. Here's where I've arrived, Steve, is I will do my post before I go to bed tonight for tomorrow. I won't necessarily log in and check that post until my morning activities are done, my real life. And then generally what it is, I'll sit down for, to get a drink, to get a snack. And, if we're being completely vulnerable, sometimes I'll be in the bathroom and I'll have a couple seconds there where I'll scroll through and respond to a message. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But the whole social media thing has really taken a back seat for me. And a lot of it is because this coaching and this mentoring thing is so important to me. The making sure that other folks have an ear that they can just reach out to at any time. I love the fact that you mentioned Eric Brew. There's another guy that I wanted to mention, Herb Thompson. I don't know if you know who that is. Your shirt reminded me of him because he was a Green Beret, a drill sergeant. The guy, he actually wrote a book I've got over there on the shelf to help, and he does the same thing. His goal is to help other veterans transition back into the civilian world successfully. And he and his wife Corey, I think they're hilarious how they play off each other on LinkedIn. Um, but so I do want to just talk briefly about the mentor you ended up lining up with, because when we first had the conversation, you were super direct about what you were looking for, which I love because that's me. And you and I knew immediately we would work very well together, and that's why we became friends. So can you talk a little bit about the mentor that you actually landed with, and what kind of a fit is that person for you?
So I'm working with a gentleman by the name of Frank Lyman right now. And Frank is a super successful business person. He works for a company. I believe he is the president and CEO of Lumoptic, which is a medical company. Frank and I were linked up because of my entrepreneurial questions and goals that I thought I was going to have. At the time, I was looking in buying to a franchise of a company, which was a veteran-owned company. On paper, it made all the sense in the world. And my wife and I even went so far as to travel to go to a discovery day for this discovery event for like a weekend and really get into it, meet the people, meet the owners, the heads, the founders, and talk to investors and all this stuff. And then we started going like, okay, which honestly, that's what brought me to North Carolina originally. So Frank and I, we talk once a month, and we are a lot alike because we are very confident in what we are saying out loud, which that's another one of my kind of personal codes. What I say matters. And I think a lot of people, yes, is every conversation got to be some serious, specific thing? It absolutely does not. But at the end of the day, when you are mentoring somebody and you're in that capacity where somebody has asked you for significant help and they've given you access to themselves, so you could have an understanding of what they want to do, okay, what you say does matter. And you have to be very, very clear about that. So Frank and I, when we talk, we could talk about cigars. I'll tell you a little bit about Frank. If for some reason I decide not to open a business, it might be because I'm kind of waiting on Frank, because when Frank retires, he's going to open up a distillery and I'm gonna be like, hey, remember that conversation we had back in ACP? Like, I kind of think that's a good idea. Now, am I going to move to Wisconsin? Probably not, but I can be hybrid. I can fly there and we can go back and forth. But, so again, our conversations are very intentional about these things. And it's not so much that Frank gives me these homework assignments that I've got to come back and report back to him each month. It has everything to do with what we talked about on the last roundtable I was on with you, which is putting the breadcrumbs down and inspiring me to take that interest and go do that thing, as opposed to, which I think feeds right into kind of a mentor versus a manager, or even a leader. There's some debates on there that leadership and mentorship are two different things, and I think those debates are perfectly fine, and I think they do have some importance and some relevance to them. For me, a mentor is somebody that walks beside me. You're walking with me. We are having collaborative conversations, and we are taking our steps together. And no one person is out in the front, but ultimately, the mentor should be very comfortable, and it should be that time to push off the mentee, and they're off in the way they go. I now am in the shadows for future assistance. A lot of times the leader is looking back going, hey, follow me. This is where we're going. This is how we're going to get there. And then it's that motivation, direction and influencing them to do that. So that's, for me, is the difference. So that's what Frank and I are doing. We're walking this journey together. He has a wealth of knowledge, but he also doesn't give me anything. We talk about ideas, and I take notes, like you always see me doing when we're talking. I'm over there writing my notes down, and and then I spend the rest of that month kind of poking around those rabbit holes and seeing what we come up with, which is also why ACP is a 12-month long endeavor. And that's why they really want you to be able to do it for 12 months, because nothing is going to be overnight. You're not going to find the answers or the solutions to these deep questions that you're asking of your mentor. Those things are not going to be, they're not instantaneous at all. So one thing I also had to understand is that when I was seeking out this ACP idea that I had that I thought was going to be a good fit for me, is, again, I had to look at Steve Pinheiro in the mirror and be like, okay, this is 12 months. You need to start looking through your calendar as far ahead as you can predict. In the military, we always got our 30, 60, 90s. We're working one quarter at a time. It's always rolling that 90-day space. But I'm like, yeah, I can do this. And not only can I do it, I will do it, and I will fit my calendar around this thing. And I think that's a big difference. I think a lot of people also they lay these traps for themselves. They have this big endeavor, but the calendar, but the calendar is always is that endeavor is being moved on the calendar of comfort. I just made that up right now, the little calendar of comfort. Um,
Well, you might want to hurry up and copyright that.
exactly. Yeah. Ricky Bobby #1. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, that's the thing is my calendar now, ACP is a main part of my calendar. Now I will tell you full transparency. I had to have a very tough conversation with Kristen Ponzel this week. And I'm like, look, I'm struggling. Okay. It's hurting my heart. I'm struggling. I have this mentor that wants to help me, and this house has just went completely sideways. It has maximized not only my actual time, but it is starting to become a personal energy evaporating catalyst. And I'm like, what are my options here? Because I really want to do this thing. I really have this plan that I think is going to be a worthwhile endeavor for my life after the military, and integrating, family members into this thing. But right now, I absolutely have to admit I cannot give it its full attention. So her and I had to have that conversation. And there are some options. I don't have to abandon it. And ACP they're very creative in the ways that they help veterans manage their time if it becomes a time constraint issue. So again, it may seem like it's kind of hypocritical. Like I just said, hey, this is my calendar moves around ACP. But if anybody out there that's watching this has ever built a house from the ground up, I think you will understand that when I say, like, I've had to finally admit that I may have to kind of go put this thing on, like a 2-month hiatus and give me like a break to breathe, focus on this house thing, get it closed out. Because again, I'm also working with my own personal code every single day. That's how I live my life. What are my codes? I spend a majority of my time John, we talk about studying leadership. Well, that's actually the second thing I study in my day. The first thing I study is myself.
Mm-hmm.
That is the educational curriculum that I have to maintain, is knowing me. Who am I? What are my triggers? What am I doing? How's the situation going to set me off if it does? Or I know that at some point, this is going to be really, really, really a spot where I'm going to be like, my tolerance level is going to be at 0. I've already pulled the reserve chute. It's kind of failing on me, like, and I'm gonna be like, and that takes a lot of time. So I study myself first every day. Then I'm studying my leadership, and then I'm trying to apply those things and talk about them with my kids and mentors and friends like yourself. So,
So I think,
that's what
Steve, I
Frank and
think
I are doing.
that's pretty powerful what you just said there, is that you reached a point where the personal stress of dealing with your situation got to the point where you said, hey, I need to take a step back. Which, the cool thing is, you're right, ACP, they've got so many tools available, and it's such a structured program, which I love about it. I've told you before, I'm a member of two, Veterati and ACP. Veterati is more freeform. Kind of, there's not a lot of rules except show up for your meeting. ACP, you're right. They've got a structure where they give you homework. They want to make sure that you're, as from the mentor side, you have reports back. They want to make sure that it's moving along. They want to make sure that you're keeping up your word. Now, I will tell you, from a mentee's side, I know that there's also some accountability there, that you're showing up for the meetings and that you're putting in the work, but it's also super flexible. It's run mostly by the volunteers who step up. And so, that's what I want other mentees to hear, is that, you'll have the structure if you want it, but if you need to take a step back, take a break, that flexibility is absolutely there.
Yep.
Because ultimately, what ACP at their core, what they want, they want people to be successful. They want you to be able to walk away from it living a better life. That's why it exists. And so I think that's great. And what I thought was cool was, I was worried about you for a bit, because I thought, man, I hope he gets the right mentor. I hope he gets the right guy or gal that can lead him down the right path. Because your passion just bleeds through in everything that you do, and I knew that you were going to put that kind of energy into the relationship. So it gave me a lot of faith to step back and know, because you and I had that talk about, well, we should just tell ACP that we did their job for them, that we found the right fit. And the cool thing, and you said this earlier, was that they matched you up with the right person because you specifically had a goal to be an entrepreneur and to launch your own business. Um, and whereas my skill set is I help people adjust to the corporate world, I help people with their leadership development plan. Um, but when it comes to, launching a business, I have launched a hobby. So I think that I want to praise them for their methods, because I think you and I are both two guys standing here saying, okay, your process works. We're glad we let you do your process.
Yeah, and it's I've had some interaction with again the individuals that help you find the mentor and back and forth, back and forth. And it's funny because I can't remember the gentleman's name off the top of my head. I apologize. But before I was handed off to Kristen Ponzel, he was like, okay, well, I will I'll reach out to the gist of the conversation was he had made it a reference to, how we could be sure that ACP is speaking, Steve Pinheiro, the correct Steve Pinheiro language, like to relate to me because of so a couple of transactions back and forth. I'm going like, man, this guy must think I'm a complete, pain in his butt. And I'm like, that's not what I was trying to do. I'm like, they can't help me if I am not telling them like, look, this is where I'm at. This is what I think. Because there again, what's the point of asking a mentor to invest this time in me? And I didn't even give them, accurate information to work with.
Mhm.
Ultimately, that falls on me. So I have Frank Lyman in my life, speaking into my life and trying to understand these things about me. And we're having these ideas because, you know, I I had to stick to what was true to me, what I knew about myself. And so again, I could surround myself with the correct network of people to give me back that mentorship. Um, that was not only specific to me, but Frank and I can go outside the box anytime we want. Those conversations, I actually block off 2 hours and we almost take up just about most of that time on the Zoom call. But there again, it falls back on me. If I'm not getting what I need out of this things, especially now that I decided when I'm retired and I want to try to get back into this network and kind of inject myself back into, hey, this is me, I'm looking for work and then all this stuff swirling around that and, your font's off and, you didn't tell your story with the right amount of sentences and, your resume has to be exactly what makes me feel good when I read it. And I'm just like, okay, awesome. You guys control what I can control, you know, which on that note, all of this is shrouded around, again, one of my personal codes, which is E plus R equals O. And I follow Brian Kite, and I've actually got to meet Brian Kite a couple of times at leadership conferences through the strength and conditioning industry. Super smart guy. I mean, I don't care what kind of day you're having, Brian Kite's going to get you revved up. That's just bottom line.
That's
So,
awesome.
but that is a massive principle that when I learned it and I was like, I agree with that. That fits my situation. And a lot of people are going like, oh, what's, those for those people that don't know what E plus R equals O real quick, obviously those are three variables. You only control one of them out of the two or the three. I'm sorry. So you're going to have E's in the event and you're going to plus, and now bam, my response added to that event is going to equal the O, which is the outcome. So if the outcome, reverse engineer your, reformulate your formula, O equals R plus E. Okay. If you didn't respond to an event, either the way you wanted or or you responded the way you wanted and you still didn't get the outcome you wanted, then you got to go back to your response, which again, it all falls back on know thyself. You have got to know who you are when you start making these responses to these events. Because if you don't, and that formula right there can be just as detrimental to your goals as it can be an asset and enhance what you and empowering to where you're trying to go.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that last piece because what I love about these videos is we drop these names throughout the video, and what I hope and I will do my best to tag all these folks because it's all about bringing people together because you never know when you're going to meet that person that helps you get over that thing in your life, or you never know when you meet that person um, and you can help them. And so, either way, I think that, if we all network and learn from each other, there's a lot of growth that can be had from that. I know it may not seem like it, but as we're coming up on the hour here, um, what does the next 5 years look like for you? And if that's too big of a window, what does the next 12 months look like for you? Obviously, you got to get the house uh, squared away, but where do you see yourself professionally a year from now?
So honestly, a year from now, I'm not sure because I don't know enough. So honestly, this next year, which is where ACP comes in, is learning about how to be an entrepreneur. How do I get started? How do I take my idea, put it on a piece of paper? And I got a lot of scratch paper notes, which I think, is obviously step one. But I'm trying to find, what I'm trying to do now is how do I glue these things together? And again, being sure that my routine and my family and myself, my health are in the right order and they are given their just dues in my day. I'm okay with this taking a year. So I may not be up and running with my business, but I've got a couple of ideas. Um, I thought about, starting a logistics business on my own. I know the industry. I have a truck, I have a trailer, I can start carrying stuff and moving it around. And who needs this and where do you want it to go? Um, I'm looking into that. I honestly, really, my heart's desire when I retired and I thought I was just going to, this is where it was going to be. And you know what? I'm gonna throw another name. A good friend of mine. He's on LinkedIn a lot. Gentleman by the name of Mark Sauter. Mark Sauter and I were in Afghanistan together several times. Um, Mark is just a super awesome guy. He is the most solid, grounded dude, and funny. His family, wonderful family, beautiful people. He just got a job overseas, doing this resourcing and kind of like a logistics type of job that I have or I'm capable of. And I was like, man, and on the one moment, I'm telling him to his face because I'm sincere. I'm like, dude, super excited for you. This is so awesome, And then I was like, but you know what? I gotta tell you, man, I'm really jealous because that was what I was supposed to be doing, and it just never materialized. Um, and again, maybe it's because the resume wasn't in the right spot. And not that those aren't important, but honestly, I got to tell you, if gentlemen, veterans that are in this stage of the game and the information we're putting on a resume, um, even in its most jumbled form, if you can't really get an idea of what this individual's potential and what they are capable of actually performing and having a conversation with them, then, I think that's where a lot of people really just kind of are like, it's just like, you know what, whatever. And, but yeah, so anyway, that's what I was supposed to be doing. So I may still try to, in the background, I'm still pursuing a career in logistics because, like I tell my kids, you got to have a plan B. So plan A right now is figure out, open a business, be my own boss, hire really super awesome people and surround myself with people or keep it maybe family centric. But plan B is I'm still looking for, because I think there's very amazing opportunities out there that, and super awesome companies. And I really want to try to stay in the government, DOD company, um, like logistics type of situation. I'm totally open to, going overseas or being in a hybrid situation and traveling. That's not an issue for me, or my family for that matter. So I think in the next year, one of those two things is going to happen, and I'm going to kind of let them happen as they happen. If I stumble onto a career opportunity, then you know what, maybe an entrepreneur was not the door I needed to walk through. and I'm 100% okay with that because that is one of my personal um, philosophies, kind of slash beliefs. My personal code
Yeah.
is, everything happens for a reason, and these doors that open and close, I don't have to like it, but there's a reason behind it, and that's where I find my comfort is analyzing that data and then being grateful for the next door that could be open, and you just have to go from there.
Yeah.
So if the entrepreneurial thing takes off, then I'm going to run with it because that's, I think that'd be an amazing opportunity. Um,
I think that's
honestly,
a great answer, Steve. I
yeah.
think, and I was recently did a call with TJ. I'm not sure if you're aware of, I'm going to butcher his name and I always do. And it's not that hard of a name. It's like TJ Boudreau.
Okay.
Um, and I'll tag him in this too. But his answer was the same. He's like, you know what? Screw the hustle culture. Let's just flow. Let's just see where life goes. And TJ is currently driving across country. And I teased him because I was in Raleigh last week, and he literally drove right through Raleigh and didn't reach out and text me and say, "Hey, dude, where you at?" Um,
Well,
but
you didn't let me know you were in Raleigh last week either, so I'm gonna bust you up a little bit now on the video. Come on, man.
I've been living in Raleigh for the past month, so I come home for the weekends. But yeah, I'm there in Raleigh. So if anybody's watching this is in Raleigh, shoot me a text. I have dinner every night at roughly 5 o'clock at Longhorns. There, they've got a great salad, um, right there in Garner. So yeah, I'm there, and I'm all for in real life meetups and chatting through the leadership legacy of life. So,
Well, definitely. If you're okay, so if you're in the area now, then I will be in contact, and we will be getting together.
so what city do you live in North Carolina?
So I live in a little town called Rayford, North Carolina,
Okay,
um, and I live in Rayford, I guess, as Rayford zip code, but all of my EMS and my utilities are county entities. They're not city entities. And I actually live closer to Southern Pines and Aberdeen, Pinehurst area. I live about 20 minutes from them because I live on the west side of Rayford out in the country.
okay.
And
Uh,
Fayetteville, North Carolina is actually like I just went to my buddy's house who lives in Fayetteville, and it was like a 45-minute drive yesterday. I'm like, dude, you got to move closer or something because I'm not, He's like, hey man, come over. Hey, let's come over. Hey, bonfire's kicking off, and let's have a bourbon and a smoke. I'm like, okay, cool, man. And I throw it in my GPS. I'm like, dude, you got to give me some lead time, like 24 hours, bro. Like that's a 45-minute drive. Like, you know, help me out here.
yeah, I just told somebody that yesterday. If I got to drive more than 10 minutes, that's a road trip.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So how close are you to Asheville?
Asheville is going to be a little more of a drive for me now because no, it's actually going to be a little bit closer. So, but I'm probably a solid close to 3 hours from Asheville.
Okay, because that's where TJ was at when he finally reached out.
Yeah.
So, Steve, I want to thank you for your time, and I appreciate you talking through the mentor journey with me, because I really, I believe there's a lot of questions about that. I met with a Navy veteran this past week who really thought that the VA was there and providing all these services, and I had to break his heart and say, no, it's actually the VA doesn't do a lot. There's volunteer organizations that they support the VA, but if you get some assistance before you get out, but the majority of it you have to do like you have done, and that is be your own advocate. Get out there, research what options are available for you, find the right mentor that works for you. And I love what you said, Steve, about finding a mentor that can walk side by side with you, who's lived your journey, understands what you're going through, and is a lot like you. I do mentor a lot of folks who I have nothing in common with, but they also have other mentors. So I serve a specific purpose for them in their life, and then they have the other mentors, like you mentioned. And so I think this is an important journey. I think you add tremendous value to it. So again, I just want to thank you. And you can find Steve on LinkedIn occasionally from time to time when he has time to check it. Steve, is there any parting words for the folks who are watching?
Yeah. So actually, I do check LinkedIn I'm piped in. I get all the announcements. I get my alerts. So I don't. And again, that's another thing about me is I try to make a point to be very responsive if somebody reaches out to me, um, because again, whatever it took for them to reach out to me, it deserves me getting back to you and being like, hey, how you doing? Let's start the dialogue. You know, where you want to go with this. The other thing too is if anybody, John, reaches out to you, and because I've been thinking this has been weighing on my heart quite a bit, and I'm going like, you know what, maybe this is what I need to start doing, because I love doing what we're doing. I love having these conversations. So if again, I will let you know. I may even throw it on LinkedIn and be like, hey, look, anybody who reads this, if you think that I, you would like to talk with me about something, I'm not an expert because I'm just talking with you. That's all we're
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And that's
I'm
all
by,
some people need, Steve, is just
yeah.
somebody to talk to.
But if anybody you come across, please, you have my full 100% absolute endorsement that you can pass out my information to anybody. And if they choose to reach out to me, I will give them my undivided attention and just kind of see if there's anything I can help them out with. Again, everything I'm telling, I have in my little metaphorical tool bag is lived and learned. And um, it's just all how you use the tools that you have. I think a lot of people underestimate they don't have enough tools. And I'm like, I would probably disagree. I'm like, I think you have way
Mhm.
more than you realize. The thing about it is, you know, is the context. You know, a good friend of
Yeah.
mine, Bartholomew, always talks about context when you're communicating with somebody. And at the end of the day, you really want to be sure that again, you don't need this massive 8-pound sledgehammer, to put your little tack to hang your picture in the wall. That's the wrong tool. Is it in your tool bag? 100%, but you don't need it for that job. So find the other tools. And you know what? If you don't have the tool, make it. Find the tool
Yep.
from somewhere else. So that's the big thing. But absolutely, again, I'm really passionate about just talking with people. If they want to talk with me, I'll share anything I have with them. My network is open to them. So, yeah, please pass on my information. And again, thanks always goes out to you for what you're doing with this project and including me. And one real quick thing, I know we're coming up on the time. I'm going to openly apologize to Jason and Adrian because since our podcast together, I've been so caught up in all this other stuff, and I told them we were going to talk, and I haven't been able to get. And it's just so I have to apologize to them. I didn't ghost them. It wasn't. I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to do all these things. And I'll be like, no, I'm not. That's not where I'm at. I've got to get the dust settled, and I am going to reach out to them and just say, hey, how are you doing? How's your life going? So, but anyway, I just apologize to them. I haven't got to them yet, but I definitely look forward to again learning about all the people that you're also helping me connect with on this as well. So.
My pleasure, sir. And again, thank you. I appreciate everybody watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.